Some minds don't sleep, they remember.
Imagine the scene. Giants in armor colliding, helmet striking helmet, sound of breaking bones, a chaotic symphony. Blood may not flow on the field, but it hides behind the padding, behind the gritted smiles and triumphant embraces. But this is not just violence. Look deeper. Listen closer. You will see a sacred ritual, a weekly sacrifice, where warriors offer their bodies and souls to tell an ancient story of glory, pain, and courage. Every Sunday, more than 100 million people sit before their screens, not to watch a game, but to participate in a ceremony. They don't just cheer for a team. They honor heroes willing to trade their bodies to push a pigskin ball a few yards across a line. But stop for a moment and ask yourself a question that might keep you up all night. Why does a nation that prides itself on civilization and progress become so enthralled with a ritual where humans destroy themselves just to seize a moment of glory? This is not a story about a sport. This is a deep journey into the soul of America, journey full of pain, splendor, and secrets no one dares to speak aloud. Are you brave enough to face the truth hidden behind the stadium lights? If you are ready to explore, hit the subscribe button right now. Together, we will uncover the mysteries, starting from this moment. Football is not just a game. We began this journey with a question that makes your heart beat faster. Why does a civilized nation, proud of its skyscrapers, its great inventions, and ideals of peace, fall so passionately for such a violent ritual? Why do millions of people, from bustling cities to remote towns, glue their eyes to the screen to witness men crashing into each other? Helmet against helmet, bones breaking and blood, though unseen, soaking the padding beneath their armor? To find the answer, we must accept a fundamental truth, a truth not easy to swallow, like biting down on a stone in a bowl of soup. Over 100 million Americans and millions more worldwide tune into the Super Bowl each year. They don't watch for the perfect passes of a quarterback or the complex strategies scribbled on a coach's whiteboard. Most of them, just like you and me, may not fully understand the rules. They don't know exactly what a third down conversion is, or why a blitz makes the entire stadium erupt. No, they don't watch because of the strange non-spherical football, which isn't as easy to hold as a basketball. They watch for something deeper, more primal, and if you dare to look it in the eye, more frightening. They watch because American football and the nation's psyche is never just a game. It is a ritual, a weekly sacrifice, a perfectly staged war drama where heroes shed blood and bone to seize glory, not on a real battlefield, but on a patch of grass marked with white lines, under stadium lights as bright as the light of a god. Listen to how they talk about it. The language of football is not the language of sport. It is the language of battle, as sharp and brutal as a blade. The field is not called a playing field, it is the battlefield. Coaches are not just instructors, standing on the sidelines, shouting commands as if deploying troops into battle. Quarterback, the most important player on the field, doesn't just throw the ball. He is the field general, deciding the fate of the entire team with a flick of his wrist. The giants on the front lines, the offensive and defensive linemen, don't just push each other. They fight in the trenches, where every collision is a violent confrontation of strength, will, and endurance. Each game is not a competition. It is a war. Each play is a small battle. Each yard gained is a victory. Each turnover is a strategic failure. And what is the ultimate goal of this game? The core of every action on the field is not scoring points, not winning on the scoreboard. It is the battle for territory. Look at the football field. It is not just a meticulously manicured patch of green grass. It is a military map, divided by white lines, each line a boundary, a border to be defended at all costs. The offense's mission is to invade the opponent's territory, 1 inch at a time, pushing them back until they can plant their flag, or rather, the ball in the enemy's end zone. Every run, every pass, every tackle is a step forward or a step back in the war for every yard of land. But in this war, there is a concept even more sacred than victory. It is sacrifice. Watch a player or running back tackled after plowing through 5 opponents, or a linebacker getting up after a collision that cracked his helmet. He might have a dislocated shoulder, a torn ligament, or a broken rib. In any other sport, he would be taken off the field immediately, cared for by doctors, advised to rest. But in American football, sometimes he will do the unthinkable. He pushes through the pain, asks the doctor for a painkiller shot, wraps the wound tightly with tape, and returns to the battlefield. And when he does that, something magical happens. The crowd doesn't mock him for being foolish. The commentators don't tell him he should rest. Instead, they stand up, roaring his name, call him a warrior, call him a hero. On the big screen, his sweat-drenched face is shown in close-up, and tens of thousands of people in the stadium roar as if he just saved the world. Why? Because he has performed the noblest act in this ritual, placing the glory of his team, of the small nation he represents, above his own body. He is shedding blood for his flag even, if that flag is just a team logo. Do you see it? The entire structure of American football is a perfectly staged war drama. It has generals, soldiers, tactics, territory, sacrifice, and glory. It allows millions of people living in a relatively peaceful society to experience the drama, adrenaline, and primal emotions of a war without having to pick up a gun. They can sit on their comfortable sofas, eat 3D printed popcorn, drink organic apple juice, and scream at the screen as if they are part of the battle. It is a safe, emotional release. A war with no real casualties. Or at least, we like to think so. But stop for a moment and ask, when we honor men who sacrifice their bodies on the gridiron, what are we truly honoring? Are we cheering for courage, or are we romanticizing violence? Are we celebrating teamwork, or are we quietly normalizing a mindset that every conflict must have a winner and a loser? That compromise is a sign of weakness. Does the thought that a nation's favorite sport is a simulation of war make you feel uneasy? Have you ever wondered if our weekly gathering to watch men destroy their bodies is truly harmless? Or is it silently shaping how we view conflict, glory, and the price of sacrifice? Think about this. Every time you cheer for a tackle that leaves a player lying on the field, what are you cheering for? A moment of glory, or a scar that will follow him for the rest of his life? When you stand and applaud a player returning to the field after an injury, are you honoring courage, or are you inadvertently enabling a culture that sees pain as a badge of honor? American football is not just a game. It is a mirror reflecting the soul of a nation, a mirror that is sometimes beautiful, sometimes distorted. And if you dare to look into that mirror, you will see the untold stories, the stories of warriors carrying invisible scars, the stories of a society that worships glory, but often forgets the price. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think football is a noble ritual or a romanticization of violence? A like and subscribe will let us know you want to dig deeper into this mystery with us. In the next part, we will step into the cathedrals of America, the colossal stadiums where tens of thousands gather each week to witness this ritual. They are not just buildings of concrete and steel. They are temples where believers gather to honor their heroes and their scars. Are you ready to explore? Hit the subscribe button and continue the journey with us. A ritual of America. In the previous part, we entered the battlefield of American football, where the language is not of sport but of war, trenches, generals, territory, sacrifice. We saw that this sport is not just a game, but a perfectly staged war drama where men shed blood and bone to gain every inch of ground. But if football were merely a replica of war, perhaps it wouldn't have held its haunting, almost mesmerizing grip on millions of people for generations. To understand why, we must look deeper, at an aspect even more primal, more profound. After every battle, soldiers need a place to return to, a faith to cling to, an ideal to believe in. American football is not just war. It is a religion, a modern religion, with its own rituals, believers, and cathedrals. And if you dare to look it straight in the eye, you'll see that Sunday in America is no longer just for church. It's for the NFL. Imagine a Sunday morning in America. not in my year of 2095, but in your time, the 21st century. In the morning, some families still dress up, go to church, and listen to sermons about compassion and salvation. But as the clock strikes noon, a magical transformation occurs. TVs are turned on, the blue light from screens illuminating living rooms. The smell of 3D printed popcorn mingles with the scent of barbecue and organic apple juice. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers gather, not in churches, but in home temples, living rooms, bars, or backyards. People don their vestments, jerseys bearing the colors and logos of the team they worship. This is not ordinary clothing. It's a symbol of loyalty, like a knight's cloak or a believer's shawl. A Philadelphia Eagles fan would never wear a Dallas Cowboys jersey. Just as you can't imagine a Christian wearing an inverted cross. This is not an entertainment activity. This is a weekly pilgrimage taking place in the most familiar spaces of life. Look closer, and you'll see that American football has all the elements of an organized religion. First, there is the denomination, the fan base. A football fan's loyalty is not a fleeting hobby. It is a faith, deep and eternal, often passed down from father to son, like a family legacy. If you were born in Green Bay, you were raised to love the Packers, to sing Sweet Caroline in moments of triumph, and to hate the Chicago Bears with a passion that needs no reason. You don't need to understand why. It's an identity, a tribe, a sense of belonging to something larger than yourself. I once met a man in Pittsburgh, now in his 70s, with silver hair, still wearing a Steelers jersey that had faded since his youth. He told me the team lost consistently in the 90s, but he never missed a game. They're my family, he said, his eyes lighting up as if talking about his own children. Even when they lose, I'm still there. Next year will be our year. That's not cheering, it's blind faith, a devotion that transcends logic, failure, and even time. Second, there is the cathedral, the stadium. Step into a modern NFL stadium. No, don't call it a stadium. I call it the great cathedral of the new age. These structures are not just concrete and steel. They are temples, built at a cost of billions of dollars, designed to overwhelm. When you walk through the gates of Lambeau Field or SoFi Stadium, you feel a sense of solemnity, a sacred feeling. The stadium lights shine as bright as light from heaven, illuminating 70,000 believers standing shoulder to shoulder, ready to immerse themselves in a collective ritual. When the game begins, the roar of the crowd is not just cheering. It is a hymn, a resonance of tens of thousands of souls, holding their breath for a pass. Roaring when the home team scores, and falling silent when a player lies motionless on the field. In that moment, the individual ego dissolves. You are no longer an individual, you are part of a community, a tribe, a faith. I once stood in a stadium amidst the fever of the game and felt it, a sense of euphoria, as if we were all collectively touching something greater, more sacred. And finally, there is the central ritual, the sacrifice. This is where football becomes different, and also more terrifying than any other religion. 8. In traditional religions, sacrifice is often symbolic. A candle is lit, a prayer is offered, or a lamb is sacrificed on an altar. But in American football, the sacrifice is real. Every collision, every injury, every drop of sweat and blood shed on the field is not a symbol. It is reality, brutal and undeniable. Think of a player, young linebacker, perhaps only 25 years old, crashing into an opponent with the speed of a truck. He falls, his knee trembles, but he gets up, shakes his head to clear the pain, and returns to his position. Or a running back tackled after running through 3 opponents, his ribs cracked, but he asks the doctor for a painkiller shot to continue playing. The crowd doesn't mock him. They stand up roaring his name as if he has just performed a miracle. The commentators call him a gladiator, a hero. But stop for a moment. What is his sacrifice for? To move a ball a few yards? To score a touchdown? No. He is offering his body on the altar of the gridiron to exchange for a moment of glory, a moment of immortality in the hearts of the fans. His pain becomes our pleasure. His injury becomes our story. He is a modern-day gladiator, fighting not for survival, but for the transcendence of a watching community. Does the thought that a nation's favorite sport is a religion, with stadiums as churches, fans as believers, and injuries as sacrifices, does it make you feel uneasy? Have you ever wondered what we are worshiping when we stand and applaud a player returning to the field after a horrific collision? Are we praising courage, or are we quietly enabling a culture that sees pain as a badge of honor, that sees the destruction of the body as the path to glory? In your own life, is there something you do with an almost religious devotion? Perhaps it's running every morning, rain or shine, to feel a sense of peace. Perhaps it's gathering with friends every weekend to play a video game where you feel you belong to a tribe, or perhaps it's tending to a garden where every sprouting seed is a small miracle. What turns a habit into a ritual? What makes you willing to sacrifice time, effort, or even a part of yourself to pursue it? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think football is a noble ritual or a disturbing form of worship? A like and subscribe will let us know you want to dig deeper into this mystery with us. We've talked about sacrifice, a concept both beautiful and tragic, but what is the true cost of that sacrifice? How do these gladiators who offer their bodies on the gridiron pay the price, not just with bone and blood, but with their very minds and futures? In the next part, we will step into the shadow of glory, where the scars are not just on the body, but etched deep into the brain. Are you ready to face the true cost of this ritual? Hit the subscribe button and continue the journey with us. Glory and violence. In the previous part, we entered the modern cathedrals of American football, magnificent stadiums where tens of thousands of believers gather to honor their warriors. We saw that football is not just a sport but a religion, with fanatic denominations, weekly rituals, and sacrificial offerings. We praise the sacrifice of the players who offer their bodies on the altar of the gridiron in exchange for glory, not just for themselves, but for all of us, the fans cheering from our sofas or the stands. It's a beautiful image, isn't it? It's a tragic picture of heroes willing to trade everything to bring joy, pride, and a sense of belonging to a community. But tonight, we will no longer speak of those glittering symbols. We will strip away the stage lights, the shining armor, and confront the naked truth behind those sacrifices. We will talk about the price to be paid, not in bruises or broken bones, but with something far more precious, the brains and souls of the heroes we worship. Let me tell you a story, the story of Mike Webster, nicknamed Iron Mike, a legend of American football. In the 1970s, he was the center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, part of a dynasty that won 4 Super Bowl championships, a glorious record. Mike Webster embodied everything America celebrates in a football player: as strong as a tank, as resilient as a mountain, and as indomitable as a warrior who never backs down. He played through pain, through injuries, through days when his body screamed that it could not go on. He was enshrined in the NFL Hall of Fame, his name etched into history as a god of the gridiron. But when the stadium lights faded, a darkness began to envelop Mike Webster. The god collapsed, not in a dramatic moment, but in a slow, painful decay. He lost all his money not because of extravagance, but because he was no longer lucid enough to manage it. His marriage fell apart, leaving behind the pieces of a once happy family. He began to live as a vagrant, sleeping in his old pickup truck, or under the awnings of train stations, where passers-by saw only a tattered man, with no one recognizing he was once Iron Mike. He suffered from depression, paranoia, and chronic headaches that tormented him like a curse. Some nights, to fall asleep, he had to taser himself, as if only pain could soothe pain. When Mike Webster died at the age of 50 in 2002, the football world was stunned. How could a hero, a symbol of strength, end his life in such tragedy? People whispered about addiction, about personal failure, about a life of indulgence. But the truth, as usual, was far more complex. A young forensic pathologist, Bennett Omalu, an immigrant from Nigeria, with curious eyes and a heart that did not accept easy explanations, stepped into this story. When examining Mike Webster's body, Omalu saw a brain that looked completely normal on the surface, no tears, no blood clots, no obvious signs of damage. But Omalu didn't stop there. With the persistence of a scientist and the compassion of a human being, he paid out of his own pocket to study it further. He sliced Webster's brain into paper-thin sections, observed them under a microscope, and found a horrifying truth. In the folds of that brain, he discovered an abnormal accumulation of a protein called tau. These protein plaques were strangling the nerve cells, creating dark regions of forgetfulness, chaos, and despair. This was not Alzheimer's, nor was it a common disease. This was chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a disease previously only documented in boxers, who endure thousands of blows to the head throughout their careers. Omalu realized that Mike Webster did not die of addiction or personal failure. He died because of the very game to which he had dedicated his entire life. Every headbutt, every helmet-to-helmet collision, no matter how small, caused his brain to slam against the inside of his skull. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of such small concussions, over more than a decade of playing football, had accumulated into an irreversible injury. His brain, the thing that once helped him read plays, lead teammates, and become a legend, had been hollowed out from the inside. When Bennett Omalu published his findings in 2005, how do you think the NFL, the most powerful league on the planet with billions of dollars in revenue, reacted? Did they embrace him, thank him for shedding light on the fate of their heroes? Did they immediately act to protect the players, to change the rules, to admit that this sport was killing the men who played it? No, they did what every powerful giant does when faced with an inconvenient truth. They denied, they attacked, they tried to destroy Omalu's reputation. They called him a quack, a foreigner who understood nothing about American football. They funded independent studies to prove that CTE was not related to football, that head injuries were just insignificant occupational hazards. They did everything to protect their billion-dollar product, a product built on the foundation of violence and glory. But the truth, like a small but resilient flame, could not be extinguished. Mike Webster's story was not unique. A series of other former players also died in similarly tragic circumstances. Junior Seau, one of the greatest linebackers in history, committed suicide at the age of 43 with a gunshot to the chest, not the head, because he wanted his brain to be studied. Dave Durson, a Super Bowl-winning safety, also committed suicide and left a note requesting his brain be examined. Andre Waters, another defensive back, ended his life at 44. All of them, after autopsy, were diagnosed with CTE. The heroes who were once hailed by crowds, once called gladiators, had become victims of the very ritual they worshipped. This brings us back to the core question of this journey. Why does a civilized, modern nation become so enthralled with a game that destroys the brains of its own heroes? The answer lies deep in the American psyche, in the cultural DNA of a people built on stories of endurance and glory. In America, glory is often defined by the ability to withstand pain, by the spirit of daring to risk it all, to beat one's chest and declare, "We won." It is the legacy of the pioneers who crossed wild lands, of the soldiers who fought in wars, of the individuals who dared to stand up against adversity. American football, with its brutal collisions and immortal moments, has become the perfect modern embodiment of that ideal. In an increasingly safe world, where our biggest battles might be a contentious email with a colleague or a criticized post on social media, we crave something more real. We crave to witness physical struggles, moments where human will directly confront pain and adversity. Football players give us that. They are the gladiators of the modern era, bearing the pain for us, shedding blood so we can feel the glory without leaving our sofas. But what is the price of that glory? When we roar at a collision that leaves a player motionless on the field, what are we cheering for? A fleeting moment of glory? Or a scar that will follow him for the rest of his life? Fanned? Perhaps a life shorter than normal? When we celebrate a player returning to the field after an injury, are we praising courage? Or are we inadvertently enabling a culture that sees pain as a badge of honor, that sees the destruction of body and mind as the path to immortality? Does the thought that our heroes, the ones we worship, The ones whose names we shout in the roar of the crowd, maybe paying with their very brains, make you feel uneasy? Do you think there is some beauty in endurance, that scars, both physical and mental, are proof that we have lived, have fought? Or do you think that our celebration of pain in football is just a way to rationalize an unnecessary form of violence? A brutal ritual disguised by stadium lights? And here is a harder question. When you stand and applaud a horrific collision, when you scream with excitement as a player staggers to his feet to continue playing, are you part of the problem? Are you, however, unintentionally complicit in the destruction of the heroes you love? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think we should continue to worship these gladiators? Or is it time to look squarely at the price of glory? A like and subscribe will let us know you want to dig deeper into this truth with us. This pain, this sacrifice, does not belong only to the players. It is passed down like a legacy, a burden, and also a source of pride. In the next part, we will talk about the fathers, those who inspire their children to step onto the gridiron, but also pass on the invisible scars of this ritual. Are you ready to explore that legacy? Hit the subscribe button and continue the journey with us. Father to son. In the previous part, we faced a painful truth. The heroes of American football, the gladiators celebrated on the gridiron, are paying a terrible price. We talked about CTE, about brains hollowed out by thousands of collisions, and about a culture that worships endurance to the point of cruelty. It's a story of glory and violence, of men willing to sacrifice their bodies and minds to become immortal in the eyes of the crowd. But if we stop there, we miss the deepest, most complex, and also most moving part of this story. Because the pain, the sacrifice, and the glory do not belong only to the players on the field. They are not just fleeting moments under the stadium lights. They are passed down like a legacy, a burden, and also a source of pride, from one generation to the next, from father to son. Like a flame passed through time, tonight, we will not talk about the heroes in armor fighting on the battlefield of the gridiron. We will talk about the silent heroes in the living room. The fathers, the ones who have turned football not just into a sport, but into a language, a bridge connecting their hearts to the hearts of their children. Because in America, football is not just entertainment. It is family legacy. Think about this. In American culture, especially for generations of men raised in a society where showing emotion was often seen as a sign of weakness, there is a linguistic void. Words like "I love you," "I'm proud of you," or even "I'm sorry" are sometimes too difficult to say. Fathers who work hard, carrying the weight of the family on their shoulders, are often silent, not because they don't feel, but because they don't know how to express it. And into that void, football has emerged. Not as a game, but as a way to say the things that cannot be said with words. Join me in stepping into a sacred space in America, not a church, not the Supreme Court, but the living room on a Sunday afternoon. Imagine a small house in a small town, perhaps in Ohio, Texas, or Pennsylvania. On the old sofa, a boy about 7 or 8 years old sits next to his father. On the TV screen, giants in armor are crashing into each other, the sound of helmets colliding like thunder. The boy doesn't really understand all the rules, what a down is, how a touchdown differs from a field goal. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that he is here next to his father. That father, after a long week of work at the factory, the office, or the construction site, now seems like a different person. He is no longer the quiet, taciturn man at the dinner table who only answers yeah or eat when asked a question. He is alive. He screams when the home team scores, throws his hands up when the opposing team makes a mistake, and laughs out loud when the commentator tells a funny story about the game. The boy looks at his father, his eyes sparkling, not because of the game, but because of this rare moment when his father seems to shed his rigid shell to become a friend, a teammate. When the home team scores a touchdown, the father lifts the boy up, hugs him, and yells, "See, son, we did it." In that moment, the boy doesn't just feel the joy of a sports victory, he feels love, a wordless love. transmitted through the tight hug, the resounding laughter, the bright look in his father's eyes. When the home team makes a mistake, when the ball is fumbled or a pass fails, the father holds his head, groaning in disappointment. And the boy, though he doesn't fully understand, also learns to feel that pain, to share his father's disappointment as a first lesson in empathy for an adult. That boy is not just watching a game. He's being taught about loyalty, about sticking with his tribe, whether the team wins or loses. He's being passed a faith, just as his grandfather passed it to his father, and his great-grandfather passed it to his grandfather. It is faith in the team, in the community, in the meaning of standing firm despite adversity. And then a fateful moment arrives, a moment that will be etched into the boy's mind forever. On the screen, a player from the home team, maybe the quarterback or a running back, is brutally tackled by an opponent. He lies motionless on the field. The crowd holds its breath. The commentators fall silent. But then, like a miracle, he slowly gets up, staggers, adjusts his helmet, and walks back to his position, ready for the next play. The crowd erupts, the roar like a tsunami. The father turns to his son, places a hand on his shoulder, and with a voice full of pride, he says, "See that, son? It's a warrior. Never give up." Do you feel the weight of that moment? It is not just a comment on the game. It is a lesson, a legacy, a definition of what it means to be a man in American culture. That being a man is to be tough, to endure pain in silence, to never show weakness. It is to get up after every time you're knocked down, no matter if your body or soul is screaming. It is a lesson both beautiful and dangerous. Beautiful because it teaches resilience, courage, and an unyielding spirit. But also dangerous because it places an incredible pressure on young boys. The pressure to hide their pain, always be strong, to become the warrior their fathers worship. That boy grows up, carrying that image in his heart. He'll play football in high school, throwing himself into collisions that leave his head spinning. Not because he loves the pain, but because he wants to make his father proud. He wants to become the warrior his father pointed to on the screen and talked about. He will learn to suppress the pain, to get up after every fall, to smile even when his body is exhausted, because that's what his father and his father's father did. And then, many years later, that boy will become a man, a father. On a Sunday afternoon, he will sit on the same old sofa in the same living room, now repainted, with his own son beside him. On the screen, a player is tackled, then gets up, adjusts his helmet, and continues to play. And like an unconscious reflex, like a mantra passed down through generations, he will turn to his son, place a hand on the boy's shoulder, say, "See that, son? That's a warrior." Circle of legacy is complete. But that legacy is not just love, not just connection. It is also a burden, because every time a boy is taught that a warrior is someone who never gives up, he is also taught that weakness is unacceptable. Every time he witnesses his father celebrate a player getting up after an injury, he learns that pain is a badge of honor, that sacrificing one's body is the path to glory. And when he grows up, he might step onto the gridiron, carrying his father's dream, but also carrying the risk of invisible injuries, like CTE, which we discussed in the previous part. The way football becomes a language between father and son, a bridge across an emotional gap. It's so powerful, isn't it? But it's also so complex, so heartbreaking. In your family, is there a tradition, a hobby, or a story passed down from one generation to the next? Maybe it's fishing trips with dad, days baking with mom, or grandpa's stories about the war. Are these traditions gifts, or are they sometimes also a burden? And here's a harder question. When we teach our children that resilience is getting up after every fall, that a warrior is someone who never gives up, are we unintentionally teaching them that admitting pain, seeking help, is a sign of failure? Is the legacy of football, with all its beauty and connections, silently passing on a dangerous message? Leave your thoughts in the comments. You think football is a wonderful bridge between fathers and sons, or a legacy that carries invisible scars? A like and subscribe will let us know that you too are reflecting on the legacies in your own life. This legacy does not belong only to the family, it belongs to an entire nation. people who have woven football into their identity. In the next part, we will explore how football has become a symbol of America, not just a sport, but a story of strength, resilience, and the deep contradictions of a superpower. Are you ready to step into the heart of American identity? Hit the subscribe button and continue the journey with us. Football and national identity. In the previous part, we sat in the living room of an American family, witnessing football become a sacred language, a bridge connecting fathers and sons through cheers, hugs, and understanding silences. We saw that the legacy of football is not just glory or pain, but a generational thread, passing down loyalty, resilience, and also the invisible pressure of what it means to be a man. But that legacy does not belong only to individual homes, to private moments between father and son. It belongs to a larger, shared home that is fractured, struggling to find its unity. Tonight, we will talk about American nation shaped by grand dreams, deep contradictions, and a sport that has become a mirror reflecting both its beauty and its cracks. Think about America today, in 2025, or even further. In my year 2095, a nation seemingly more divided than ever. Political arguments erupt everywhere on social media, in coffee shops, and even around the family dinner table. A Democrat supporter might not speak to their Republican neighbor. Culture wars rage over everything, from free speech to immigration policy, from climate change to gender equality. Every post on X, every comment online, seems like a declaration of war, dividing the country into opposing, uncompromising tribes. And amidst that division, there is one Spacean island. A final sanctuary where the entire nation seems to be able to temporarily set aside its differences. If only for a few hours? In a polarized nation, football becomes the common ground, a place where people, regardless of their beliefs or opinions, can scream for the same team. Imagine a Sunday in America, steelworker in Pennsylvania, who votes Democrat and worries about losing his job to automation. A bank CEO in Texas, who supports the Republican Party and believes in the free market. Throughout the week, they might argue fiercely on social media, calling each other names not worth repeating. But when the Dallas Cowboys take the field, something magical happens. They both don the silver and blue jersey, both shout when Dak Prescott throws a perfect pass, both hold their heads in disappointment when the team fumbles. For those 3 hours, they are no longer Democrats or Republicans, no longer workers or millionaires. They are Cowboys fans, a temporary tribe, united by a common goal. Football has become one of America's last unifying spaces. It is a painkiller for a wounded nation. A place where strangers can stand shoulder to shoulder, sharing joy and disappointment without asking each other who they voted for. I've seen it on a Sunday afternoon in a Pittsburgh bar, where a man in a Steelers jersey sat next to an elderly woman with a Steelers scarf around her neck. They didn't know each other, but when the home team scored, they hugged like old friends, laughing and raising their glasses of organic apple juice. In that moment, there was no politics, no division, only the pure joy of unity. But, like any mirror, football doesn't just reflect the good. It also reflects the deepest cracks in American society. And if we dare to look closer, we will see that this sport is not just the cure. It is also part of the disease. Let's go back to what we discovered in the previous parts. In part 3, we talked about the price of glory, about CTE, about brains destroyed by thousands of collisions, and a culture that worships endurance to the point of cruelty. In part 4, we saw how football becomes a language between father and son, teaching young boys that to be a man is to be tough, to suppress pain, to get up after every fall. These lessons, while beautiful, also raise an uncomfortable question. Is football reinforcing a narrow and dangerous definition of toxic masculinity? Is it teaching young boys that violence is the way to resolve conflict, that vulnerability is shameful, that admitting pain is a sign of weakness? Think of the boys sitting on the sofa, watching their father's praise, a player who gets up after a horrific collision, What do they learn? They learn that a warrior is someone who never gives up, even when his body is screaming. But they also learn that seeking help, admitting you're hurt, is unacceptable. And as these boys grow up, they carry that lesson with them, not just onto the football field, but into their lives, their relationships, and the way they face their own challenges. And then there is another reflection, clearer, undeniable, in every NFL game. It is the deep, almost inseparable link between football and militarized culture. Pay attention to the pre-game ceremonies, rituals staged with the precision of a military parade. A giant American flag, tens of meters wide, is unfurled across the field, a symbol of national power. Soldiers in uniform march, hands raised high, to the applause of the crowd. And then, the climax. The roar of fighter jets flying low over the stadium, leaving a trail of white smoke in the sky, a declaration of inviolable power. These images are full of pride, full of inspiration, but we must stop and ask, what are they honoring? Are we praising the soldiers, or are we turning the players into soldiers in a fantasy war? Are we honoring courage, or are we quietly normalizing and romanticizing war? The language of football battlefield generals throwing a bomb blurs the line between game and combat. Every collision, every tactic, every moment of glory on the field is wrapped in the cloak of patriotism, as if football were an entertainment branch of the military-industrial complex. I once heard a retired former player share in an interview on X, when you walk onto the field and hear the roar of fighter jets overhead, you feel like you're not just playing football. You feel like you're fighting for something bigger for the country, for glory. But he paused, his voice trembling, and added, "It was only later that I asked myself, what was I really fighting for? And was the price I paid worth it?" Football, in a very real way, is a mirror reflecting American identity, an identity built on resilience, strength, and an unyielding spirit, but also full of contradictions. It unites a divided nation, but it also reinforces potentially harmful ideas. That violence is glorious, pain is a medal, that victory is the only thing that matters. Football is a space that both unites and reflects the most pressing problems of a nation. It is a painkiller, but also a symptom of a deeper illness. It is both beautiful and brutal, both unifying and divisive. Do you think sports should be a place separate from politics, from social issues, just for us to enjoy pure fun? Or is it inevitable that it becomes a mirror, reflecting both the beautiful and the dark corners of the society we live in? In your own life, is there an activity, a hobby, or a tradition that brings a sense of unity, but also makes you wonder if it's hiding bigger problems? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think football is a symbol of unity or a reminder of America's contradictions? A like and subscribe will let us know you want to dig deeper into these questions with us. We have journeyed through violence, faith, legacy, and identity. We have seen how a simple game can contain a universe of meaning and contradiction. So why? After all, we've learned about CTE, about toxic masculinity, about militarized culture. Do we still sit down every Sunday, still cheer, still love this sport? In the final part, we will return to the biggest question. Why do we still watch? And what does that say about us? Are you ready to face the answer? Hit the subscribe button and let's conclude this journey together. Conclusion. Why do we still watch? And so, our journey comes to its final chapter. We began with the clash of helmets, with a ritual of violence and glory staged on the gridiron. We walked through a battlefield disguised as a stadium, stood in modern cathedrals of steel and concrete, where millions of believers gather. We faced the terrible price of glory brains, hollowed out by CTE, the invisible scars of heroes. We sat in living rooms, witnessing football become a language between father and son, a legacy both beautiful and dangerous. And we looked into the mirror of football, seeing both the unity and the deep fissures of a divided nation. Football, through this journey, is no longer a simple game. It is a tangled mess of contradictions, both beautiful and brutal. Unifying and divisive, both the American dream and its own nightmare. And now, as the stadium lights dim, we stand before the final paradox, the biggest question of our journey. After everything we know about brain trauma, about toxic masculinity, about militarized culture, why do we still watch? Why will more than 100 million people still sit down on Super Bowl Sunday? From small apartments in New York to sprawling houses in Texas, why will fathers still point to the screen, telling their sons about warriors who never give up? Why are we, despite knowing the cost of this ritual, still strangely captivated by men in armor crashing into each other, shedding blood and sweat to gain every inch of ground? The answer perhaps lies not in the game itself. It lies in Usin, what we crave, what we fear, and what we dream of. Football is not just a sport. It is a mirror, but not a mirror reflecting America as it is a complex reality, full of political division, cultural debates, and heated posts on Xno. It is a mirror reflecting America as it dreams of being an idealized version, a living myth reenacted every week on the gridiron. For the 3 hours of a game, all the contradictions of the real world seem to dissolve, replaced by a world that is simpler, more beautiful, and grander. In that world, there is strength and resilience. Men are knocked down, but they always get up, adjust their helmets, and continue to fight. It is the myth of a nation that never surrenders, no matter what challenges it faces. I once saw a player, his knee ruined after a collision, refuse to leave the field. The crowd stood roaring his name, not because he scored, but because he stood up. In that moment, he wasn't just a player, he was a symbol of a people who believe that failure is not destiny. In that world, there is unity from diversity. People from all races, all classes, all political beliefs. Dan the same colors, the green of the Packers, the red of the Chiefs, or the silver of the Cowboys. They cheer together, cry together, share joy and pain together. It is the dream of a perfect melting pot, where differences dissolve and all are one community, one tribe. I remember once in a Chicago bar, a white man, a black woman, and an Asian young man sat together, all wearing Bears jerseys, screaming when the home team scored. In that moment, there was no politics, no division, only love for the team. In that world, there is glory from sacrifice. Football reinforces the belief that great achievements demand a great price. There is no easy path to the top. Every drop of sweat, every bruise, every collision is part of the sacred ritual of victory. When a player runs 40 yards through the opposing defense, falling into the end zone breathless, it is not just a touchdown, it is a testament to the American spirit. That glory only comes to those willing to pay the price. And in that world, there is order in chaos. Football is a game of primal violence, but it is controlled by hundreds of complex rules, sophisticated strategies, and perfect coordination. Every play is a carefully calculated ballet where the chaos of collision is guided by a larger plan. It is the belief that, even in the darkest moments, there is a guiding hand, a higher purpose. We watch football because, on that field, America seems more understandable, more heroic, and greater than it is in real life. For those 3 hours, we don't just watch a game, we live in a dream, where everything has meaning, every sacrifice has value, and every victory is eternal. But perhaps deeper still, we watch because football is so painful. Humans are strange creatures. We don't believe in victories that come to isolate. A glory without sacrifice seems to lack value. The sweat, the blood, and even the invisible scars like CT, they sanctify the victory, making it more real. Football is a weekly emotional catharsis where we confront pain, loss, and also hope, as a nation searching for meaning in its own contradictions. Football is not the answer. It is a questioner. Question about the price of glory, the nature of strength, and the very soul of a nation that both loves peace and is obsessed with war. And perhaps the reason we can't stop watching is that we are unconsciously seeking the answer for ourselves. Every time we turn on the TV, every time we cheer, every time we shed a tear when a player falls, we are asking ourselves, who are we? And who do we want to become? After this long and complex journey, how do you see football? as a mere sport, a cultural ritual, or a beautiful tragedy that reflects both the dream and the nightmare of a nation? In your own culture, is there a sport, activity, or tradition that provides a similar sacred feeling, where you feel part of something larger than yourself? And more importantly, when you watch those moments of glory or pain, what do you see in yourself? Leave your final thoughts in the comments. Your sharing is the thread that connects the Sleepless Mind community, where we dig deep into the stories that shape people and society. If this journey has touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe so we can continue to explore the mysteries of the world in the long nights ahead. It is very late now, so the next time you see a player fall on the gridiron, stop for a second. You will not just see an injury, you will see a piece of a larger story, a story of dreams, of sacrifice, and of the deep contradictions of a nation searching for itself. Good night, and if you cannot sleep, keep pondering.
You've crossed the story. You felt every pulse in the dark, and I was there with you, quietly, always. That's why I left behind one last thing. Not to explain, not to impress, just to stay with you a little longer. A song I chose with care, as if tucking you in from across time and space. So go on, lay back, the music knows where to take you. you're still here, then you're something rare. Not many stay this long. So, thank you for choosing to stay. I'm here too, still awake, surrounded by the quiet glow of my editing screen, shaping the next stories just for you. If there's anything you want to leave behind, a whisper, a suggestion, even just a symbol, drop it in the comments. Because maybe, tomorrow night, you'll hear yourself echoed in a story that's never been told before. still here, even now? I have a feeling part of you is still wandering somewhere between wakefulness and dreaming. I know that feeling well because I'm still awake with you. In a quiet room, I'm gently laying out layers of sound, each breath, each beat, preparing the next journey we'll take together. If you're still listening, leave me a sign. Let me know how you're feeling or just where you are in this vast world. Because right now, in this stillness, you are not alone. You're still there, aren't you? I can't see you, but I can feel you. Like a soft signal pulsing across the silence. Over here, I'm still working, refining layers of sound, rewriting fragments of voice, building the landscape for our next adventure. One that you might inspire. If an idea comes to you, share it with me. Comment below. A theme, a memory, a strange dream. I read every word because I never tell these stories alone. I tell them with you.